CFL Combine one-on-one with Toronto Argonauts Assistant General Manager Vince Magri. Vince, this is a week all about Canadian content, but you already added a pretty big piece in linebacker Jordan Williams, a former first overall draft pick. What was the motivation behind that trade?
Really, once we knew that there was a possibility of acquiring him, like I've said before in different settings, prepping for the draft is a year-round thing. It's not, 1 or 2 months. We've been evaluating this draft class really for years. And when you look at a player like Jordan and look at not only what he accomplished prior to coming to the CFL and his resume at ECU, but the resume he's kind of put together in the CFL already over the first 2 years. When you're picking at the end of the first round, you're hoping and praying that you can get that kind of production that Jordan's already shown. So for us, the ability to potentially turn the 9th overall pick into the former first overall pick that's already been a rookie of the year, for us was a no-brainer.
You already have Enoch Mwamba in-house and Wynton McManus, so what do you foresee as the role for Jordan Williams this season?
We expect him to come in and push to start and play. Obviously, the best player is going to play. Enoch was phenomenal for us last year and was obviously a key component in us winning that Grey Cup, especially in the Grey Cup game itself. We just think you can't add enough talent, especially young talent, especially Canadian talent. It was just too good to pass up. But, we expect him to be on the field making plays for us.
The compensation for that move is your first-round pick. How does that change your approach to a week like this and the entire offseason, knowing you don't have a selection in the top 9?
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't really changed it just because, we're not trying to give a scoop or anything, but you just never know what's going to happen in the lead up to the draft or on draft day if any situation prepares itself. It's not like the movie Draft Day where, you trade up and all of a sudden you're unprepared. We want to make sure we got everybody evaluated, even the guys that are, potentially going to the NFL, right? We're still going to do all our background due diligence on them because you never know what's going to happen there, and they might shake free 3-4 years down the road. So we're going to do our homework on everybody regardless of where we pick, and then, really the whole slotting and the fact that we don't pick until pick 16, I believe it is, in the second round. That's something that obviously when we start mock drafting and have our final draft meetings, then on draft day itself, obviously that'll come into play, but we're not going to change the way we're prepared just because of that.
Is there any thought about making another move to move up in the draft?
It's not at the front or forefront of our minds, but you never know. But we feel confident in our Canadian content already. There were times last year that we started 10 Canadians in a game. I believe we started 8 in the Grey Cup. So we still have that flexibility to start, at least 7. We could start 8 or 9 if we wanted to. So we don't feel like we need to press it. But at the same time, you never know on draft day. We don't want to shut any doors.
You have a history of finding value later in the draft. A guy like Giddens Jr. is a CFL All-Star after being selected in the 3rd round a few years ago. What did you see in him that has translated into his success in the CFL?
It's funny because I remember watching Curly and we were really high on him at the time, and it was just, you just didn't know, could he play on special teams? How quick could he get on the roster? He didn't run a great 40 time, but we had a really high grade on him, like first-round grade. And when you just watched him at Laurier, you saw just how smooth he was. You saw that he never wasted any movement. He had great feet. He caught everything. But the biggest thing that always stood out with Curly was his competitiveness and how hard he did really every drill, every time he touched the ball, whether it was as a returner or as a receiver, his ability with the ball in his hand after the catch. He was just smooth, sudden. And the thing, that we loved about Curly that we didn't even know until, his rookie year, but when you know the makeup of Curly and his background and kind of how he competes and how he's wired, we go into our first year and he starts off on the practice roster. And, he never played special teams in college other than as the returner. And, I think we were week 2, week 3, and, we had some injuries and he had to get on the field and play teams. And now he's playing, he's a blocker on punt return, he's a gunner on kickoff, and things that he never did in college. But when you know the way Curly's wired, he's going to give it everything he's got. And in that game, he threw a key block that sprung Chris Rainey for a punt return touchdown, and the rest of that year, Curly never came off the roster. He didn't catch a bunch of balls, maybe only 8 to 10 balls that whole season, but it kept him on the roster. It kept him growing, and and then he obviously took off the last couple of years.
Is he the best Canadian receiver in the CFL right now?
I might be a little biased, but I'd say so. I think his contract might say the same thing.
Thanks, Vince. Have a great combine.
Thank you. Appreciate it.